It's September 28th, 2023. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode 288 of Roqe. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto, from Canada. Salam Dostan Aziz. Durud bar Shoma. Hope you're doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. We are on our ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. This is conversations from, to, and about Iranians. And as such, I have two stellar Iranian descended humans with me here. Smart Pegah, as usual. Hello.
Hello.
And broadcaster, reporter, producer Mahsa Mortazavi. Hello.
Hi, Jian.
Salam, khanum.
Salam.
Salam az kardam.
حال شما چطوره؟
Merci. You know what? The worst thing, somebody told me the worst thing recently about when I speak Persian, which is that, and then I realize it now every time I speak, which is like, this is the way I speak in English. I have a voice that people say is mellifluous. I have this tone. For some reason, when I fucking speak Persian, it turns into salam khanum. I got this high, weird, I don't know why. آره من اینطوری خب ببینم, like I don't know. I'm talking like my aunt who's like, you know how people used to yell when they're on the telephone and they still do it, like it's like no, you're living in Toronto now. خالزارین, you know, it's like سلام چطوری جیان جان, you know. So I feel like I talk like that.
You know, I never noticed that until you just said it.
It's so true. No, it is. I sound horrible in Persian.
It's what you hear in your brain.
No, people, others told me this. So they're hearing it in their brains.
واقعا?
Yeah, honestly.
You have to speak Farsi more.
Let
me evaluate you.
But, you know, think about it. You're somewhat of a different person when you're speaking a different language,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
You know how you think about you speaking English versus you speaking Persian. You have a different confidence, you have a different demeanor, you have a different history with it. So it makes sense that I don't exactly speak that.
Right.
But it was delivered to me in the worst way because the person was like, you know, you should just speak English. And I was like, why? No, my Farsi's getting really good. And they're like, oh no, it's the tone of your voice. It's really fucking horrible.
But I think it's the confidence thing. Like I feel the same way. When I speak English, I can speak really confidently, and then when I speak Farsi, I'm like, I almost see myself kind of like shrink a little bit.
I think also I speak faster because I'm nervous or something, and
to compensate.
But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I am excited about the guests we have on today. Afshin Naghouni, the great painter in London, England. And, you know, Afshin, we've had him on the show a couple times before, but we've never actually done his full story, which is because, let me explain. I mean, he is a remarkable painter, stunning, world-renowned painter. So you never want to reduce a great painter to just some story about what happened with the regime in Iran, etc. But it's an incredibly difficult and traumatic story of what happened to Afshin when he's at a party in Tehran and they are chased by the Pastaran, by the Basij, or whatever they were called at the time, and he falls and ends up in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And so he's going to, for the first time, at least on this show, and I think for the first time in English to a certain extent, tell that whole story. And we'll also talk about where he's at with his painting and et cetera. I'm excited to have him on the show. He's later in the show. First up, the Shirvani Sisters. Do you know, have you heard of them before?
I have. No, I hadn't, but I looked them up. And I saw so many beautiful pictures and performances and stuff. And the interesting thing for me was that they were present in the rallies.
They're very active.
Yeah,
they're very active, which is also
they're
in Italy. So they are Iranian, British, Italian sisters who are remarkable classical musicians. And they're going to both be on the show talking about how they've become these classical musicians. I'm very curious about their identity because they are in Italy, I think they speak English with Italian accents, in fact, to a certain extent, and British accents, and yet they are very active in the women life freedom movements,
Right.
and they're just fantastic. Every time I've seen them online and stuff talking, they've great personalities. I'm excited to have them on the show. The Shirvani Sisters in England. Now, I wanted to, so they're coming up in a little bit from, where are they? Where are they, sound person Louise? They're in Rome. So I want to talk about some serious stuff about America and the ways in which the U.S. admin is enabling the regime in Iran, and we can do that during the Roqe Roundup. But something much more important first, which is this.
I feel like we're going to hear about Arsenal.
No, this modern talking.
Oh,
Again.
This, I have landed myself
There we
in
go.
some predicament with this Eurosynth modern talking band. Because to catch people up,
yes.
I have for quite a
Jian's
while.
favorite band to catch people up.
I mean, I've been talking about how I really, not only do I not understand why Iranians are so enthused and seduced by this modern talking band, that I just generally think the music is horrible, is shit, and I feel bad. I feel bad saying
why
that
do you
because,
bring it up every time?
well, I'll tell you what's going on. You see,
Just for you.
thank you, sound person Louise. Now,
I know this song.
of course you do. It's in your DNA. What is
Sing
this
along.
song?
I don't know what it's called, but I know it. Like, I've heard it. My mom plays it all the time.
Okay, thank you, sound person Louise. See, Mike, I mean, why wouldn't you just listen to Pet Shop Boys
I have
or
no idea who
Erasure
that
or
is.
some band? Exactly. You don't, but you know modern talking.
But-
Now, let me explain why I'm bringing this up again. Because I guess one of the guys, now, first of all, I've done a little bit of research because I really didn't know that much about modern talking. I just knew that I was allergic to the music every time
What
I
I'm
heard it.
thinking is that by the end of your research, you're going to fall in love with them. You're doing so much.
They are
research on
handsome
them.
chaps. I'll give them that. Listen, it turns out modern talking, these two guys,
Yes.
Thomas and Dieter.
Dieter.
Dieter is quite a German name, yeah. And then I'm not sure, but I don't think Thomas and Dieter are still together.
Okay.
I think they modern talking as we knew it
Is now split.
they're no longer together. So because modern talking, quote unquote, are coming to Toronto to play a
Yes.
show. But if you look a little closer, it's Thomas from modern talking is
Right,
coming.
right.
All right. And
Oh,
I think
there's a
he's
fine print to it.
Yeah.
that's right. I think Thomas is the singer with the
What did Dieter
tan.
do?
Dieter, well, there's lots to do with modern talking. I think, but exactly. So it's like there's amongst the great Simon and Garfunkel, the great
Dieter.
duos in history, Sonny and Cher, Thomas and Dieter, right?
Yes.
So now, because I've been talking about this modern talking and how I just don't get it. I don't get why Iranians, like in an ocean full of amazing Western bands and groups, nobody talks about the Rolling Stones, or Jay-Z, but they go on and on about this modern talking, right? Or even in the genre, like I say, what about Pet Shop Boys? What about Tears for Fears? You want to do synth, 80s music? Nothing. Modern talking. So I've been talking about my disappointment with the Iranian community.
Yes.
And then, and by the way, I've said this before, but the shock, like when cousins of mine found out that I didn't know modern talking, it was like saying you don't know who Pink Floyd is. They were like, you don't know modern talking? This is great band, like they were getting mad at me, and I was like, no one's heard of modern talking. And now that I've done my research on Thomas and Dieter, I will concede that apparently in Europe, not the UK,
Okay.
in continental Europe, the Middle East, and Iran, and modern talking had some hits. They were a well-known band. Not at all in North America. Nobody knows them.
Which explains why you didn't.
Again.
See, what is this now? Do you know this song?
Yes. Yes, I do. I've heard it.
It's so horrible. I can't. This is the kind of stuff that was winning the Eurovision. That it just you can't. Okay, thank you, sound person Louise. It's torture. This is like when they were when Noriega, when the U.S. caught him and they were trying to smoke him out of the, he was caught somewhere. They were playing really loud rock music to get him out. It's like, you play this stuff and I'll just do anything you want to make it stop.
It's your fault that I'm getting sponsored ads of Modern Talking on my phone all the time because you won't stop talking.
Let me explain why I'm bringing this up. I have received, no word of a lie, like probably maybe not 100, almost 100, like probably like somewhere between 70 or 80 messages from people sending me the concert info for Modern Talking.
I was one of them.
That's right. Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, saying, hey, listen, Thomas is coming to town.
You should go.
You really need to go see. And some of them are doing it sarcastically, but some of them are really appealing to me. Listen, I think if you go and see Modern Talking, maybe you'll change your mind.
I think you should go, and we should do a segment on Jian at the Modern Talking.
I feel so bad because this Thomas, I mean, he finds out the things I've been saying. He's going to...
well, you can say, I'm here to change my mind, that sort of thing.
No, well, I don't know. But I'm in a predicament now because all these people who listen to the show
want you to go.
No one has said they agree with me, by the way. The Iranian community is up in arms. It's not like everything else where we're divided as a community. Yeah. In this case, the entire community is on one side, me on the other. They're like, we love Modern Talking. What's wrong with you? Yeah.
You need to get with the program.
Thomas Dolby. There's an electro 80s artist you could listen to instead of Modern Talking, but oh no, your mother doesn't play that in the car, does she?
Not that I know.
So I don't know what to do with this Modern Talking. Maybe I need to go to the show.
Maybe you should.
When is it?
November or something.
Listen, I know all the details. It's been sent to me. I can't wake up without a message in my inbox about Modern Talking. And it's true, I'm getting the ads too. I think they're targeting me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you've been receiving messages and you've been talking about this.
Listen,
so much.
let me tell you something. We people, if you want ads on this podcast, or you have to pay. I've been talking about Modern Talking for 10 minutes now. If you didn't know, they've got. I think it's 2 nights in Toronto. By the way, 2 nights in Toronto. Get your tickets now.
Go see Modern Talking.
I can't. The other thing that I was getting in my inbox this week was, last week I did this. Opening essay about how, or did I did an opening essay about it, or I talked about it on the show. I talked about it on the show about how everybody makes the case that we need unity, that we had that first year anniversary show, or the launch of our new season. We had 13 prominent Iranians from around the world come on the show, and every single one of them said the great takeaway, the great lesson of the last year has been the community around the world needs to come together. We need unity. And yet, how are we doing with that? So I talked about my disappointment on the show. Exactly, not good. And I talked about how in Toronto, we couldn't just have one rally. On the 1 year anniversary, we needed 2 rallies, and now I hear there's even more. Yeah. Well, and I talked about this with some disdain, but also just sadness that, hey, come on, can we not just all go walk in the same rally? We don't have to agree ideologically about everything. Well, wouldn't you know it, the responses I've received.
Should I be scared?
Well, most of them.
I'm holding my breath, literally.
Most of them, honestly, are in defense of more than one rally.
Really?
Like, they're like, you mean you want me to fucking walk with those people who won't let us carry whatever flag we want to.
This is why we had numerous rallies. This is exactly
Go
it.
Review my comments. The comments on my Instagram, they target me.
What did they say?
They say, like, why did you cover that one? Why didn't you cover this one?
Why did you cover that one?
Because it was the bigger one. Huh. Like, I am only one person in Toronto. I can't be in 2 places at the same time, right? So I have to choose one that is bigger and that covers the most of the community.
Now, I don't understand. Now, I went on the one that was at the Queen's Park one. To catch people, a lot of people are listening who are not in Toronto. Only like a certain segment of our audience is in Canada. But to catch you guys up, I mean, because this probably happens in your communities. There was 2 big rallies in Toronto or more on the day of the anniversary of it. And Toronto's a huge epicenter of Iranian diaspora community. This is a chance for thousands and thousands to be on the street. And they were, but they're balkanized. They're divided. They're in different places because of these not being able to get along. So I went to the Queen's Park one, which was quite a big one.
It was big,
but then somebody was saying to me, one of these people who was kind of saying, no, we have to have 2 rallies, said, you went to a rally where you're not allowed to carry the Shir Khorshid flag.
Which is not true.
Was that not true?
No.
Well, the funny thing is, I was carrying that flag
I
for the
know,
whole
exactly.
thing. But apparently that was one of the rules that they set up. Which
there were no rules.
There were no rules. Okay, you know what? I actually, there were some rules, which no one listened to, by the way. And not even rules, but guidelines. Like, if you look at the post that they had posted on Instagram, you know, calling for this day of action and whatnot, they said, try to wear white. We're all going to walk. There's all these, like, plans in place. No one wore white, or hardly anyone wore white.
No, some people wore white.
I mean,
But, yeah.
in comparison to the amount of people there. And, like, the chants, they had chants pre-selected to say, you know, we're going to say these chants. There's an application. You can follow it. No one followed that. I mean, we're so quick to make judgments and to call out things about these hot topics like the flag, and yet we don't take the time.
Well, so where
to
did that person
actually-
get that from? There was nothing said
No,
about
there
which
was
flag.
It's
You
just their personal assumption.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've been dealing with this.
Because nobody told me to not carry the flag.
Of course not.
And in fact, I took a picture of Bahadur Alast and Shahrzad, the wonderful couple. And they were
Yeah.
both draped, and they were wearing the Shir Khorshid
Yes.
flag, and they were on that march as well. So I was thinking, it didn't seem like we couldn't have that
Well,
flag.
look
But
at the footage that we have.
Exactly.
We have tons of footage of that event.
yeah, but I will say it. Not to super both sides this and everything, but it isn't just one camp that's not participating with the other
No,
camp.
absolutely
It
not.
is
It's
going. It is a
both, yeah.
reciprocal thing where they're going, we don't want to play ball with those people, and they don't want to play ball with, and it's just a shame because it on a much broader level, it invites the question that do we, if you believe in change in Iran and freedom and democracy and the concomitant end of this regime in order to bring that, do you need everything worked out in advance, you know, in terms of everybody getting along on every single point about what the future of Iran is going to be? Or can we just deal with, you know, change in Iran first and then leave it to the Iranian people to figure out what comes next? There's some sore lessons from 1978, 1979 about leaving it until what happens next. But it does seem to me at this point, debating ideologically about whether, you know, not being at the same rally doesn't make sense to me. And I actually had a couple of people write to me and say, you're wrong. We don't need to be united. We disagree with these people. They need to come on side. And
That's why we are in this situation after
Exactly.
44 years.
Yeah.
For not being united. Shirin Ebadi was in town. I don't know if you know it or not.
I don't know that. Yeah, I didn't know she was.
Yeah, she was in town for 2 days. There were some conferences and stuff in the University of Toronto, and that was one of the things that she emphasized on. And I asked her actually, if you think that we should be united, why couldn't you, like the group of 6 people who wanted to be united? And she said, the fact that I couldn't do it doesn't mean that you can't. You should try. But I mean, if a group of 6 people can't do it, it's
Exactly. I mean, that
does-
was
it takes all
certainly
the hope away.
that was certainly
Yeah.
darkly symbolic when these 6 somewhat self-appointed but also appointed by the community so-called opposition leaders couldn't, you know, play in the same playpen together.
I have my strong opinions on that, but I'm not sure if I should share them or not. I think it's specifically for one group of people who are trying to be separate from all the others, and it's not working out good.
Well, we should also say that some of this, I think, legitimately, and you would know this as somebody who works with Iran International and stuff, some of this is the regime or the government of Iran has the power and the technology and the outreach around the world to create some divisions, especially in the online space, right?
Yes, that's true. But how many of those people are now in Toronto who create a separate crowd of 1,000 people, like march in a different area?
I don't know. But anyway,
That's
that was my between why, you know, why did you go to that rally instead of this one, and why do you hate modern talking? My inbox was quite a beehive of activity. The Shirvani Sisters in Rome coming up in just a bit. Afshin Naghouni, my dear friend, the fantastic painter, and more importantly, the Arsenal fan, Afshin, will be coming up as well, joining us from London in a little bit. Let's do a bit of Roqe Roundup before we get there. Pegah and Mahsa are here. So, leading off, we've got 5 quick items today, and something that emerged in the news a couple of days ago. In fact, it emerged based on quite a remarkable report. This is some great journalistic stuff done by your folks over there at Iran International. Sometimes I have some issues with them. In this case, they did a great job. Iran International and Semaphore, who put out a piece, I guess it was early yesterday morning it came out, that's, depending on how you, where you're at on this situation with American involvement with this regime in Iran, you either roll your eyes or you believe this is quite scandalous. But Pegah, explain what came out in this report yesterday.
So really quickly, it was an investigative report that's basically uncovered Iranian-backed influence operations in the U.S. So, like you said, it might not come as a shock, but this is concrete evidence now showing that there's been a close relationship between the Islamic Republic of Iran and some associates who are part of the U.S. administration, namely some associates who were working with Robert Malley, which was the special envoy to Iran, who's now under investigation. And so a team that worked, I guess, kind of under him, if you will. It's being referred to as the Iran Experts Initiative. That's what this group, I guess, is being called.
Or the Youth Network.
That's right.
Sorry.
And a lot of this has come to light because of emails that were uncovered.
So just in plain terms, what this says, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the regime in Iran was working with a group who were working with Robert Malley to basically collude or to come up with solutions for how we can bring the U.S. and Iran closer together.
I think the simplest way of saying it is that they were peddling the Islamic Republic's lobby they were lobbying for the Islamic Republic in the U.S. So all that reformist talk that we had seen, all of the, well, Iran's not so bad and they're just like us and they need a nuclear program and, well, let me excuse them for this act that they did and that act that they did. That's what this.
My reaction was anybody who thought it was a conspiracy theory to say that the U.S. administration is holding backroom talks or colluding somehow with the regime in Iran is now. This is founded in reality. And it certainly raised an eyebrow to see Robert Malley's name because we've been talking about this guy we can't quit this guy or he can't quit us. He's the special envoy to Iran. He's the head of the. Now, this was, to be fair, a few years back, right? This is in 2014.
Yes.
So it's not last year or something like that. But Mahsa,
it is extended to 2021, actually.
That's what I was going to say. The emails span from 2003 to 2021. Like the source emails that this report is based on, there's emails dating as far back as 2003 and as recent as 2021.
And what did you make of this?
So I wasn't really that much surprised because I knew there was something going on. We've been hearing some news about Robert Malley and how they have ties to Iran and they're trying to do the lobby thing for the Islamic Republic. But I was surprised of the amount of emails that were exchanged, the amount of closeness that the Islamic Republic has to the United States, despite saying that this is Shaitan Bozorg. They've been calling it Shaitan Bozorg for the past 44 years.
The Great Satan.
So they've been very close to each other, and they're trying to figure out a way to actually work things out behind closed doors.
Let me just bring this back again to if somebody's listening going, well, so what? What do we care? What do we, one of the mantras that some of us have had over the last year was we don't need the West or the U.S. or Canada to save Iran. We just need the U.S. administration to stop enabling.
Exactly.
And now we find out that this is direct evidence of, it's not some fanciful thing that some activists came up with. And how has the State Department in the U.S. responded to this?
So that's the other part of this. I personally think their response was a joke because the State Department spokesperson, Matthew Malley, when asked about this,
Matthew Malley?
Miller.
Matthew Miller. Malley. I'm confusing
you got to.
O'Malley.
No relation to Robert Malley. Yeah.
Yes, Matthew Miller. I'm sorry. His response was pretty much, this was 10 years ago, and I'm just going to refer this to the State Department because the one person that is still working with the U.S. administration is with the State Department, and I don't want to talk about something that I don't really know about. And it was just so dismissive, and his responses were ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, I understand, yes, Some of this is from many, many years ago, but it doesn't change the fact that this is still scandalous.
He
like
was
you said.
obfuscating. That was
Yeah,
that was quite
absolutely.
clear.
And he went
Yeah.
far enough to say we are proud of the work that Ariane is
Exactly,
doing right
yeah.
now, because like she's been a great service to the U.S.
That's right. And also confirm that, these individuals are hired based on extensive background checks and this
Right.
and that. And we have no doubt that this person is a valuable asset to the administration. Great. I don't have a problem with that. But it doesn't excuse the fact that you are, one, enabling the Islamic regime. Two, you are in bed with them, essentially, because look at the people that are part of your administration and are going back to these individuals and are basically asking for permission to print things, to attend
Where to
things,
go.
to speak to people. I mean,
I'm sorry, but I mean, I'm not suggesting that any other administration would necessarily be a lot better. I don't have a dog in that fight necessarily, but the Biden administration, this stuff comes out, and I think about that Nowruz garden party, and I just get so angry, and the people attending taking selfies, and I think about, it was 2 weeks ago that on this anniversary of Mahsa's killing, that the Biden issued a statement. It was kind of very extremely superficial one. Yeah, I don't know if he issued it, somebody wrote it for him or whatever, but it said, we stand by those who want democracy in Iran. It's just such nonsense, such nonsense. And not to only pick on the U.S. I feel, and again, we've talked about this a lot on this program over the last year, but Canada, and more than the last year. I mean, Reza Mordi was here probably 2 years ago, and I was saying, well, why is the IRGC not on the terrorist list? A former liberal parliamentarian himself. He said, I don't know. They don't give me an answer. This hypocrisy between the lip service that our Canadian leaders give towards supporting democracy and finding justice for Flight 752, all of that stuff, and what actually happens is very disappointing. And there's been some events here in Canada in the last few days that for those outside of Canada, they may not have heard about, that you wanted to actually talk about. They're not directly related to Iran.
No, but
you
I wanted
thought
to,
that, yeah.
I thought to myself, because this is like, when I heard it, it sounded funny to me. So there was this 90-year-old man in the audience of the parliament when Volodymyr Zelensky was here last Friday, and they cheered him for being a great service and for being a national hero for Ukraine.
He was 98 years old.
98, yeah.
And he's a 98-year-old Ukrainian man who they thought had
Yaroslav
fought in
Honka.
some war, but they didn't get
So
further
it
than that,
turns out
apparently.
that he was a Nazi. He was in charge of killing people, probably. And he was a volunteer. And he never resigned, and he wasn't even like regretting being in a Nazi.
An
because he was-
enthusiastic Nazi.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So he was a volunteer, and he got cheered, and everybody stood up for him and clapped. And that moment exactly, I thought to myself, like, Iranians want this government to identify people with ties to the IRGC and to the Islamic Republic, and to prevent them from coming to Canada. Yet we have such a person in the audience of a parliament who was invited actually to be cheered for, and he turns out to be a part of a Nazi group.
Oh, tell the rest of the story. I mean, then it's turned into a scandal.
It did.
For which...
So it went on, and it turned big. It was on the news all over the world. Humanitarian organizations from around the globe,
Jewish groups, etc.
Jewish groups, different
Identified.
countries, they reacted, and it ended up by resigning for Anthony Rota,
the Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the
Our
House.
Prime Minister, by the way, Justin Trudeau, has a remarkable talent for not taking responsibility ever for anything.
Yes,
that,
and he
for passing
accepted-
anybody else.
He actually accepted the apology. He was like, okay, that's okay. He made a mistake. It's honest mistake. That's fine. It can happen to anybody.
But your point, and it really does seem like, how difficult would it be to vet whether this guy was a
On a
Nazi
day
or not?
that the Prime Minister and the head of a state of another country is here, it has to be taken more seriously.
But your
Like,
so
for
your
the people who you invite.
is your so your point is that this level of carelessness explains why.
Yes,
But
it does.
Yeah.
It explains for me.
I mean,
Like,
even if it
honestly,
doesn't
I think they
explain
don't
it.
care enough.
That's what I was going to say. That even if it doesn't explain the fact that the carelessness doesn't explain it. It shows that there isn't the level of care that's needed to go that extra, I won't even say mile, step for God's sakes, to do a proper background check to see if in fact we should be standing in, the house and having everyone stand up and applaud this.
I always say, how hard is it? How hard is it to identify who the Iranians connected to the regime?
I can look at them and identify them.
The 21-year-old driving a Lamborghini down Yonge Street?
But see, I'll play devil's advocate. I don't agree with that because I think that as Iranians, especially those who have been, are of, let's say, our camp who are against the Islamic Republic, which is almost everybody in the diaspora as far as I know, we have a certain bias towards this hurt that we've had for the past 40 some odd years. And because of that, oftentimes I think we jump the gun on that. And I agree that it may be easy just by looking at someone to be able to identify them. And 9 times out of 10, we might be right. Mm-hmm. But that one time, I don't think it's fair for us to be the same as the Islamic Republic and kind of paint everyone with the same
Doesn't
paintbrush.
sound like you're playing devil's advocate. You actually believe that we should be careful.
I'm just saying I think we should be careful because I don't think it's enough just
Mahsa,
to say
how do you
can
look at them and tell
say,
that they're with the regime?
I have to cough first. Sorry.
Okay. By the way, everybody in this studio except me has COVID, and I'm going to get it again. How many times a year do you give me COVID,
I
Pegah?
don't have COVID. I had COVID.
Yeah, all right.
But
I don't have
coughing.
anything. I just think Anaita made me sick, and it's coming on. So
talented
I don't know.
Anaita. That's talented Anaita.
Let's get to the question. What was the question?
The question was, you did say something that some people might consider might raise an eyebrow. You said I can look at them and tell who's tied to the regime when they come here.
I can identify by the look, by the way they talk, because I've been living in that country for long enough to identify those people, and I can see them in Canada, and I can actually see the ties between them and the government of Iran. Either they have been raised in a family with ties to the government, or they have right now ties to the government of Iran and they live in Canada.
That sounds, I trust Mahsa.
No, I don't disagree. I just think if we are to, on the same topic of, unity amongst all of us and doing this the right way and addressing things the correct way and all of that, I just think, yes, even though we can, and it's easy for many people like Mahsa who has spent, most of her life in Iran and has grown up with it and all of that, I think it's also...
And reports on it every day.
With all of that being said, I think we have a duty to do proper due diligence so that we're not in the position of someone like Anthony Rhoda.
But at the same, sure, and at the same time, you just have to say, Canada, for all that we talk about. Canadians pride themselves on this is our, we are the mosaic, we are the country that cares about democracy and human rights, and think about how important like identity issues are to Canadians, and whether it's, whatever it is, that this is a very progressive country as in terms of its self-identity of we lead the world in wanting to, care about everybody's rights and all of that. I feel like Canadians need an education on what's going on with the type of Iranians that are allowed into this country to at the taxpayer's expense. By the way, the number of people who come here, come here, have a kid here, so that the kid has a Canadian citizenship, then go back to Iran. And so this kid then has all the rights that a Canadian citizen will have for the rest of their lives. Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying that I feel like if Canadians really knew about all of this stuff, and the Azadehs,
if Canadians knew,
they wouldn't be happy about it.
The type of people the Islamic Republic trains, they wouldn't allow such people to come to Canada, because it's not only a threat to the Iranian community here, it's the threat towards the whole society.
Yeah, and I just want to refer that back to what we were talking about with this new report that just came out. This is exactly why having a lobbyist group like the IEI or the youth group or whatever they're being called is so detrimental, regardless of the fact if it was 10 years ago or wherever else, because it is shaping and forming public opinion.
But also, we're having this conversation, whether it's about the United States or Canada, in the same year as arguably the biggest, movement for change in Iran since the last revolution, right? In the last 45 years. So and the whole world professing support for the women of Iran and the young people of Iran and the ones who want change in Iran and all of that. And yeah, I mean, we got the situation with the Aghazade's in Canada, and you've got Khamenei walking around New York, getting the free pass from the Biden. No, I mean, really, they had to give.
What they did to our journalists.
They had to give these guys special dispensation to be able to come to the United States. They basically invited. They could have said you can't come. They invited the heads of the administration of the regime to come to America
and rolled out the red
carpet. They forbid them from
too.
going to Washington D.C. though.
I know. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. They didn't. They stopped the
Not
foreign
good
minister from going to D.C. Well, I mean, really.
Yeah.
You had to. They're sanctioned to not travel. They're sanctioned to not come to the U.S. They're sanctioned. All of this. They get diplomatic immunity to come and steal the spotlight in the same week as a $6 billion deal, and right after Mahsa anniversary. Yeah. And take away from Cristiano Ronaldo going to play. Finally, we got to move on here. You want to talk about 3M paying Iran $10 million? Is that what
I thought it was interesting that another $10 million was going to Iran.
This is
after the
3M is the tape company, the Scotch tape company.
Yes, exactly.
Why are they giving $10 million to Iran?
So apparently, it's been found by the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control, so the OFAC, that they violated 54. They had 54 violations of sanctions over the course of some years, 2016 to 2018, I think, where through the Gulf subsidiary.
Okay, you lost me already. Just
long story short,
yeah.
They violated sanctions, and now they have to pay $10 million to Iran, and Iran is happily accepting it. Right. So another $10 million in the pockets of the Islamic Republic.
Before we close the Roqe Roundup, just a shout out to our friends who work for Iran International. It's kind of a heartwarming story. You guys are not you necessarily, because you're the Toronto or the Canadian correspondent, but most of your team are now back in London. They've reopened, and it looks like a glamorous new studio in London. Was this all just a ruse to build a fabulous new studio in London?
It was actually something that it was being prepared before everything happened. But then everything got expedited because of the situation. So it would have taken more time to prepare this new studio, but to
catch people up. Iran International, the network, had to move its operations from London because of threats from the regime, et cetera. We were told to DC, and now you're back in London.
Yes, we are. So the studio in London was closed on February 17th, and it's now reopened for the past 2 days. And it's big, it's huge, and it's good news for all the journalists around the world that they can't be silenced.
And what did your bosses tell everybody, or you, about how security is going to change or something in terms of allowing this?
Security. In the area that we had our previous office was a shared area. It was a business park, so there were many other businesses around, and it was difficult to secure everybody who went there. Like thousands of people would go there every day, so they had to go through a very serious security each morning and each afternoon. But this area is isolated, it's separated, and it has a dedicated team of security people who try to maintain the security of our staff who are going there.
Got it.
Yeah.
خوشحال شدم که رفتی برگشتی. Why did my voice go up? I have no idea.
You have to work on that.
It's my modern talk. You know what it is? When I speak Persian, I think of modern talking, and then I get a high voice. That must be what happens.
I'm going to text you every time I see an ad. Honestly, I'm going to.
Why are they sending you ads?
Because
we talk about it.
It's Thomas. Thomas from.
What was the other guy's name?
Dieter.
The tan guy.
Thomas and Dieter. I know more about modern talking than I wish to know at this.
Thomas.
The tan guy?
The very tan guy. Yeah. Thomas. Still has the tan, actually. A little older, a little paunchier, but still rocking the tan.
Still orange?
It's a dark shade of We're coming to you on roqemedia.com. Is that you can actually admire his tan, a very nice tan. It is there that you can link to all of our platforms. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, CastBox. If you want to see visuals, go to YouTube. at Roqe Media. And if you want your Roqe descriptions and bulletins in English and in Persian, check us out on Telegram. Remember, you can subscribe on all of those channels. And please do share our content if you have friends or anybody, acquaintances that you think might be interested. And to support us at Roqe, you can become a Roqe member on our Patreon page. So if you go to our website, roqemedia.com, press the support us button. For a few bucks a month, you become a Patreon member and get some special perks with that. We love you guys who become Roqe members. Thank you so much. Thank you. I had a whole other thing I was going to talk about, but let's get to our guests because they've been patiently waiting. Thank you, Mahsa. Always good to see you. I'm glad that you brought your COVID here and you've passed it along to me, so you'll be better now. And Pegah.
Silence.
always a pleasure to have smart Pegah Ganji, SPG, here in the studio. Let's get to our first feature guests. They are a talented duo, acclaimed Iranian, British, Italian musicians who also happen to be sisters. Take a listen to this. Sublime sounds of the dynamic duo, the Shirvani Sisters. Born to a British mother and an Iranian father, Layla and Sarah Shirvani have a musical journey that began at a young age for both of them. Layla's remarkable talent on the cello led her to win numerous competitions before she was 10 years old, and she would go on to earn prestigious degrees in London and Rome. Sarah, a pianist, similarly showcased her great skills from an early age, and they performed together as the Shirvani Sisters. Beyond their musical achievements, Layla and Sarah are dedicated to environmental sustainability. They founded the Eco Academy in the Woods. This is an upcoming music academy promoting creativity and cultural exchange in harmony with nature. And their inspiring blend of music and activism make them influential figures in their field. They're also both very active in supporting the fight for freedom in Iran with the uprising over the last year. We'll get to all of that. But first, right now, Layla and Sarah Shirvani join me from Rome today. Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much for having us.
You even say hello in perfect unison and harmony somehow.
Used to performing together.
Actually, I should start with that because I've been watching you both perform and watching interviews in preparation for this. And you do seem to a tedious extent, you seem to get along. I don't understand how these two siblings appear to like each other so much. You perform together, you've lived together, you understand each other. Do you always get along this well?
Can't stand her sometimes. I'm joking. Well, she's supposed to get on with me. Like, she has no other option.
Right.
I only have one sister, so she has to be okay for me.
Well, Layla, I heard you saying in an interview at one point that you were such a nuclear family. You were such a small family and you didn't have a lot of family around you as you were growing up. That you guys, I'm assuming you're, to a certain extent, all kidding aside, you're kind of sisters but almost best friends as well, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Sure. Most definitely. I mean, I think, there's something small, but in a way it's significant. You might think we're completely crazy, but we have the same dreams. I mean, it's happened for us to wake up in different places and tell different people at the same time that we dreamt of the same thing. So somehow, I mean, it's very strange, but we do have a very strong bond.
People don't believe us when we say these things, but it literally happened for me to talk about the dream I had to some person, and she did the same thing on the same morning, and then we discovered like hours later about what had happened.
We feel for each other. I mean, even if we're not together, somehow, I mean, if she's not okay, I'm not okay, and vice versa.
See, I've heard of that kind of energy, notably with twins, but you're actually just it's not a lot, but you're a few years apart too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But
He's bigger.
you're answering in unison. I mean, case made. Example A. There you are. And you're both polylingual. I mean, you speak a few different languages, or at least English and Italian. What language do you speak with each other? Say, if you're in the kitchen.
Well, it depends what we're talking about.
But actually, all our friends make fun of us because we will switch from Italian to English constantly. Like everybody laughs when we speak because we might say, just a word in Italian and then a sentence in English and then a sentence in Italian and backwards and forwards. So
yeah, it depends what we're talking about. Like, for example, she is much more polite when she talks in English. I can guarantee that.
So
I have a strong Roman accent when I speak in Italian, unfortunately. I grew up in Rome and you can tell.
What is it that you're talking about when you speak in English, say, to each other?
Well, if it's a family issue, for example, or if we're talking about something, something personal, maybe.
Yes, if it's something quite serious, I think it can easily be in English. But when I get angry, I can't manage to get angry in English.
Yeah.
If it's something, I don't know, if I'm talking about something that just happened, then I might just talk about it in Italian.
If she gets cross with you, she only knows how to insult people.
I'll know that if you switch into Italian, I'll know you're pissed off. Yes, and from what I understand, your Persian sucks, right? You don't speak Farsi very well.
Unfortunately, not.
And that much to the chagrin of your dear Persian father. Has he not?
Shame on him.
Shame on you. What happened?
He should have taught us. It's his fault.
Well, we grew up like begging him to talk to us in Farsi, which he actually didn't. Like, the family language was actually English, but we found a Farsi teacher, so that's the first step. And we're going to try and do something about this. Yes,
that would be wonderful. I think it'd be great if I'm saying this as if I'm like amazing at speaking Persian. I'm not, but it's a step, and I think it's a good idea. And I'm glad that you both get along. I'm hoping there's something that can come up in this interview that'll drive you apart, so we can see Sarah screaming at you in Italian, because that's her angry language. Speaking of your father, though, let me get into your story. And you're so interesting, you guys. You're so talented, and everything about you is fascinating, and I think for much of our audience around the world, they may not know about you yet. So let's educate them. You're both these talented musicians. It seems like music was never really, going into music was not particularly a choice. I mean, it was just something that was in the DNA. Both of your parents are musicians, both good musicians. Would that be true, Layla, that this was just inevitable, that you would end up doing what you're doing?
Well, yes and no, because I think, in a way, it was a very obvious choice. It wasn't surprising that I chose to play the cello, or that I asked my parents to buy me a cello, because clearly it was basically the only thing I could see, like, everywhere and all day. But at the same time, I think, there are lots of families who have kids, and if you're not really 100% convinced, if it's not something that you really want to do, it's quite a tough choice to make. So I think if you're not made for it, if you're not built for it, if you don't have something to really say,
no one's going to force you into being a musician. That's for sure.
It's one of those things that you can't be forced into doing, I think.
But in terms of your story, we had, say, Jian Mortazavi on the show not long ago, and he talks about how when he was in Iran at 10 years old, he first saw a violin, and he was so inspired that he wanted to figure out what this instrument was. Or we had Yasmin Naqdi, who is a ballet dancer with the Royal Ballet in London, and she talks about the first time she saw ballet on TV, and she knew she wanted to be a ballerina. It occurs to me that you probably didn't even know life without cello or without music, right? When you started, when you were born into this family.
Well, it's really funny, because apparently, not that I remember this very well, but my parents tell me that when I was a kid, I thought everyone played the cello. I was convinced till I went to school that everyone owned a cello and that everybody actually played it.
Right.
Because I only saw cellists. So I presumed it was like, I have a kitchen, I have a washing machine, I also have a cello. How could you live without it?
Right. You were shocked to find that there were kids who weren't particularly didn't have a facility for cello. Yeah.
Massively disappointing, yes.
And Sarah, you're even more interesting in the sense that you come a few years later, and I would think if there was going to be a textbook rebel, it would be you, and you'd be like, no, screw you, I'm going to become an astronaut or a swimmer or something. But you then follow in the footsteps with a bit of an alteration where you play the piano instead of cello. Why that?
Well, three cellists are plenty in one family. Let's begin with that. But they wanted me to play the violin, but they tried sending me to do these violin lessons with this man. I was only 3, so I thought he was really elderly. Probably he wasn't. Right. But I saw him with this enormous white beard, and I said, no, I'm not having violin lessons with that man. And so I saw my mum playing the piano, because she used to play the piano with my sister, because my mum is cellist and the pianist. So I asked if even I could play the piano. So then she started teaching me how to play the piano, and that's basically how it all began. And then they all took advantage of me, because cellists need a pianist to accompany them because they can't play alone. So basically, they all took advantage of me.
Did you?
When she was 8 or 9, she would come to competitions. She would accompany me, and it was we literally took advantage of her from the very start of her childhood.
Right. The youngest has to play the
Child
piano.
Abuse.
Right. I mean, you have an Iranian dad and a British mom? Did they meet because of music? Did they meet because they were? How did they meet?
They met in Rome. They were studying music in Rome, both of them, and they met thanks to music.
They studied with the same teacher.
Yes.
And so I guess I have my answer, but I'm assuming they were both encouraging you both to get into music, huh?
Well, I'm sure they were, definitely.
Yeah.
They definitely were. But at the same time, I think, like, when I was about 3, I started asking them to buy me a cello. I started saying, like, why does everybody have a cello except me? Come on, I mean, like, get me a cello. And as Sarah said, she was quite definite over what she wanted to do. I mean, she was interested in the piano. She wasn't interested in anything else. I mean, they did try and force the violin on her, and her answer was no. So, I mean, clearly we've been encouraged, and that's what we saw. That's the environment we were in. At the same time, I think we were quite clear about what we wanted to do.
There are great stories of great siblings who go into the same field and end up being quite competitive with each other too. Are you two competitive? I mean, is there a streak where you kind of go, damn, she just won an award, I need to do that? Or does it help that you're playing different instruments so you don't quite have that? Sarah?
I think even if we'd played the same instrument,
No.
I don't think we could ever be competitive. Like, the happiest moments of my life was when she won something. So I think, honestly, I don't think it could be possible. Like, if I have an exam, a concert or anything, and she is literally more anxious than me because I'm doing something, and vice versa.
Well, I mean, she will always be a little chick, really. I mean, she's the smallest, she's the youngest.
Layla, be honest. There was never a point where you were jealous of all the attention the younger sister's suddenly getting or something like that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
You want to talk, I mean, if you want to talk about that, like, as a child, I remember when she came along. Well, I think in general, my father was much more strict with me than with her.
Oh, yes,
and I
definitely.
think that's a lot to do with the fact
But
that
there's a reason, though, because my father used to be Layla's cello teacher as well as her father. So he had this sort of strict thing with her. And I was
his
just
student.
I was his little darling. I had nothing to do with his cello lessons, so he would just play with me. So he would play games with me, and then he would force her to practice. I'm joking.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. I mean, all that child thing, which is just classic. It's typical. I mean, I remember being quite fed up because, I mean, she would be my dad's little princess, and I remember being annoyed with that. And clearly, I mean, when she came along, I was 7.
My sister is 3 years older than me, and she definitely was not happy with me for the first 20 years of our lives because I was I was getting all kinds of advantages that, she had to break the ice with the traditional Persian father and all of that, and then I came along and took all advantage of it all. And we also have the gender divide too, where as a Persian boy,
I know exactly what you mean. Like I'm with her 100%.
Yeah. Well, I'm not with her. I'm with Sarah. Because it's not our fault that we were the younger. Yeah, but
but just those two sentences were so perfect. The things you said were so perfect.
Yeah, it also occurs to me, though, I mean, this upbringing in Rome as children of a British mother and Iranian father, it provides such a unique cultural perspective. I'm going to ask you about your relationship to being Iranian or half Iranian, et cetera, in a few moments. But musically, I'm curious. How do you think your blend of backgrounds, I mean, you could answer it doesn't have any effect. You're classical musicians and you play what's on the sheet music or whatever. But I mean, I'm curious if this blend of backgrounds has influenced your approach to music and the way you express yourselves as artists. Layla?
Absolutely, definitely. I mean, I think there are two things that have to be said. Like the first thing is, in a way, for us, music is a way to connect to that part of our culture which we haven't really had enough of. So I mean, clearly we miss our roots because we've never been to Iran, or we've missed out a lot on Iranian culture. So music is a way to reconnect with that. But at the same time, I'm sure that also, like, having grown up with different backgrounds, because it sounds very strange, but in a way, I mean, we fit in quite well to Italian culture, but also British culture, and perhaps that it might sound, also we fit into Iranian culture. And in a way, we feel very much at home amongst Iranian culture. So I'm sure that influences also our way of appreciating music and maybe also of expressing ourselves through music. So definitely, I mean, I think that.
I mean, off the top of your head, Sarah, do you believe that a classical artist who is Italian and lives in Italy would express themselves different from a British one, and that you're drawing from those two wells somehow?
I don't know from a British one, but maybe I think they would express themselves differently from a Persian musician, maybe, because even we came to know many Iranian musicians, even very young musicians, who play very, very well. And I noticed that their approach is different to music. Well, even we clearly have been influenced from our Persian side. And I think that along the years, it's been interesting because by playing Persian pieces, even all our Italian friends, Italian musicians came to know something new, because no one had ever heard of a Persian melody, a Persian piece, a Persian song. Because I mean, whether it's just you get on a plane, it's 2 hours away, and you go to the UK and you can just experience everything by yourself. I'd say most of the people I know have never been to Iran.
Of course.
So
what's an example of you said it's a different approach that a Persian musician would have? Can you think of what an example of that would be for people to understand what you mean?
No, I was actually thinking like in really musical terms. Like I noticed that they have such an intense musicality, like their expression is so intense and sometimes so spontaneous. Like I noticed that many of them have this very, very strong musical feeling that not necessarily, don't get me wrong, I mean, Italian musicians can be amazing, but sometimes they have something very melancholy in their way of expressing themselves that I don't always see in Italian musicians. I don't know, it's just my personal opinion.
It's actually what I was about to say. I was about to say that they have a very spontaneous approach. So in a way, maybe it's even more sincere.
Meaning it's less regimented somehow, or less in a certain tradition?
I don't know. I mean, I think yeah. Well, maybe yes. Maybe in a way, I think Iranian musicians are very, they're used to expressing themselves without boundaries and in a very sincere way. So I think that somehow mixing the two different types of approach together, that can be interesting.
What was your dad? I mean, if he's teaching you, would he himself, I guess, would be a sort of blend of all these. Why you both? What was that? You looked at each other. And, what was that? What was that little smile about when I talked about your dad teaching you?
Because I don't know, when it comes to my dad teaching, I don't know, it's just
I think it makes us smile because our dad, in a way, he can be two completely different people. Because so when he's an Iranian dad, he has that very sincere approach, which is like extremely spontaneous
and very creative as well.
Very creative. He improvises. He will play any instrument you give to him. He will play percussion. He is incredibly spontaneous. Whereas when he's in his Italian version, because clearly, I mean,
he studied in Italy.
He studied in Italy. He's very academic. So it's funny because you see that switch. He, in a way, he's both things, but sometimes he tends not to mix them together. So
yeah, he's like two different people. Like if you get him in his relaxed Persian moment, he can be incredibly spontaneous and just get a drum and start playing. But then when it comes to something serious, when he grew up in Italy, and he studied cello in Italy, so he went
in Italy.
He taught for his whole life in the conservatoire in Italy. So clearly, his approach to music or to teaching music is Italian,
and it's quite academic. Yeah,
so it's completely.
Is he still involved? Like, does he still, call you guys up and say, I just watched your video and I was actually going to do a Persian accent, but I don't even know what his accent. Maybe I said, I just watched your video. He's got an Italian accent. He says, and you made a mistake on the flat nine. I don't know does he still get involved and sort of instruct you, or is he past that?
I can describe that scene in 1 second. My sister was practicing and he was having rest, supposedly. So I passed by his room and he was lying like this, like a mummy or something. It was like this. And I just passed by and I was like, oh my God, he's dead. Is he alive? And he was like, tell your sister that second one was terrible.
That's perfect. Yeah.
He acts as if he's sleeping, but he's not. He's always listening to her.
Do you guys live with your family still?
Well, it depends where we are. Like Sarah does. I work in the south of Italy, so I actually teach in a conservatoire.
She doesn't have a home. She's always
right. You're homeless.
You don't know where she is.
What we've always learned about musicians from Persian culture is you're homeless. But no, of course you're.
When I'm in Rome, I'm actually at my family's home. But to be honest, I teach like 600 kilometers away.
Well, that doesn't make the Shirvani Sisters gig easy, then, does it?
Well, yes and no. Like recently, it's been a little bit more difficult to organize things, but I mean, when I'm around, I'm with her, and actually, it's really because we have many concerts together that we manage to plan rehearsals and time together. Yeah.
And when you're working together. Again, I'm trying to ask these the name of the show is Roqe, which means blunt, of course. So, but I'm trying to ask questions that find out about the dynamic between you two. But I mean, what is the working dynamic? First of all, what is the key to working together? And second, and part and parcel of that, I suppose, is there one sort of leader between the two of you that says, okay, this is what we're going to work on, this is what we're going to do, or do you have a coach or a third person that comes in and directs what you're doing? Tell me about the dynamic.
Not really. Well, I think the dynamic is that, like, most of the time she's like, Leila, do you realize there are only 2 days left to our concert? Okay, I'm not playing with you if you don't stop and we start rehearsing. So generally she is the one like dragging me into it and getting a little bit more into that thing.
I'm the person who has a heart attack 2 days before, and she's really casual about everything.
That's so. I thought I 100% would have guessed it was the opposite. That the older sister would be the come on, let's go, and
no.
And it's not because I'm responsible. It's because I'm anxious. Like I start getting anxious about things, and she's just so casual about everything. Because, and then she knows it's going to be okay. I don't know. She has a sort of superpower, and she thinks and then everything's going to be fine. And I'm making up everything in my mind. I think
we compensate each other. Like she is more anxious. Trust me.
Just to give you an example, the other day we had a concert, and the organizer said, "Oh, by the way, the person who was supposed to introduce your concert lost the train. He was supposed to,
musicologist.
A musicologist. He was supposed to speak for 20 minutes. So I thought we could have this interview on the stage before the concert with all these people, so they all get to know you before the concert. What do you think?" And Lena was like, "Oh, great!" And I was like, and she didn't even look at me when she said, "Great."
How do you dare? You can go and talk to them. Leave me alone.
When he went down, I need to kill her.
I hope you start yelling in Italian, because that's what I expect from you when you're mad.
So angry, and I was like, "I don't want to have an interview on the stage before the concert. It's all your fault. You said you." Oh my god.
So did you do the interview before the concert?
Yeah, sure.
She said yes.
So
She
Layla, is it
forced
that you are just such a superstar that you're this is all easier for you? You're not as anxious, or
No, absolutely not. No, I think it's just like
It's temperament.
Exactly. It's all about temperament. I mean, I think everybody is different. Like some of the best classical musicians in the world who I know, they suffer before every performance. Like before every performance,
Right.
if you saw it's not insecurity. It's just nerves. I mean, they look like they would do anything to escape. Then they get on stage and they're like lions and everything is fantastic and you would never be able to imagine. And then there are other people who are not like that. So I think everybody's different, essentially.
I know that. I mean, I come from playing rock and pop and folk music, so it's a different approach to classical music in my experience. Again, my sister, for example, was taught in the classical music vein, and I wasn't. So my style is very much more improvisational, and I tend to write and everything. And she was very used to just sort of playing the sheet music, very accomplished, much more than me, playing the sheet music that was given to her. How much are you able to be jazz artists with each other to a certain extent? Do you improvise? Do you write? Or is it very much taking sort of classical traditional music and performing it together as best you can?
Well, I mean, we have a classical music background, definitely, and that's what we come from. But we have some experience in the jazz field too. Well, in a way, I have quite a bit of experience because, well, I worked with Paolo Fresu quite a lot, and I was brought into several jazz projects, and so was Sarah. So, I mean, I think it wouldn't be fair to say that we're jazz musicians because, like, improvising is not really our thing. But we're not, like, strictly classical. We're not that stereotype that you would imagine of musicians who only know how to do that one thing. I mean, somehow I think we can fit into different fields.
If you were at a mehuni, if you were at a party and there's a piano and a cello lying there, and somebody said, "Hey, come on, guys, play us something," would you more likely play a piece that you know, a rehearsed piece, or could you sort of improv with each other?
No, we would play a piece that we know, but perhaps we would play something traditional. Like there are so many like traditional songs, not just Iranian, but also Italian or from all over really, which we learn how to play on our instruments. And in a way, it's as if it was a classical version of popular or traditional songs. So I think that's probably what we would do.
Let me ask you about, you've mentioned actually a few times now Iranian music, and we've talked about your dad. I'm so curious how much you do or don't identify with being Iranian and with Persian culture. I mean, you obviously grew up outside of Iran, but Iranian dads tend to be quite dominant in terms of teaching the culture or bringing it to the household. So tell me, Layla, how Iranian or Persian have you felt growing up?
Well, clearly it would have been nice to experience spending more time with our Iranian family, and it was a shame that we weren't able to do that. But at the same time, I think we did grow up. I mean, I remember when I was 3, like my dad would he would say, okay, we're going to go out and buy Mehmouni shoes. And in fact, I actually thought it was an English word. It took me a long time to realize what it meant. So I think we did grow up in an environment where Persian culture was always there. And for example, we grew up with him singing Persian songs for us. And
I mean, also all our friends grew up eating Persian food.
Yes.
So much that one of my dearest friends thought it was just normal to have what we called Persian rice, but we didn't teach her the name of we didn't tell her, look, you're having Roqe Sabzi. We just told her, it's Persian rice.
Who made the Persian food in the house?
Our father.
Wow.
Yes. Okay. So then when she went to school, she was in primary school, and she asked the teacher, she said, so what are we having today for lunch? Could we have Persian rice, please? And they were like, Persian rice? When do you have Persian rice? And so I think even through that.
Or for example, Nowruz, we've always celebrated that, and we've always brought all our Italian friends into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's face it, Persian culture is fantastic. I mean, how could you not appreciate it? So
it was us asking our dad about Persian culture. Like he really didn't impose anything. I mean, 90% of the time it was us asking him to make Persian food or to celebrate Nowruz. I mean, we go out and we buy flowers and we're really happy to celebrate it.
I saw you saying in an interview, I think that your dad, your grandfather, cannot return to Iran, and we get used to hearing these things, of course. But I'm curious if there's any particular reason. I mean, were they politically involved, or was there some reason why, notwithstanding the last year, where your own activism I'm going to ask you about, but growing up, was there a reason why you couldn't visit Iran?
Well, essentially, I think it's fair to say that my dad was always very active, because essentially our grandfather, he had to escape after the revolution. He was the director of the opera theatre, and he was like very, very involved in the cultural life in Tehran. And after the revolution, he was forced to escape with his wife and with our aunt, who in fact lives in LA and was never able to go back either.
Right.
So I mean, I think like my whole family has very openly always been against the regime, and my dad has always expressed his opinions in quite a clear way. And essentially, like when he got Italian citizenship, he was told, look, it's fine, but if you go back to Iran, things go wrong, they will go wrong, you can't rely on us. So I mean, that was the situation.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into your own activism, and when I asked the question about being how much you identify as Persian or Iranian, I actually kind of know some of the answer to that, because my first introduction to you guys, believe it or not, was last fall. Was not through your music, but I saw some of the posts that you'd put on were getting shared. A couple of them must have gone viral, because I think I saw you, Sarah, in particular. There was pictures of you at the protests with the uprising. You were both quite involved in the uprising last year, and you even did a concert in Rome in January in support of the Iranian people. Tell me how the effects in Iran, tell me how the effects of the events in Iran, the effect they had on you over the last 10 months. This obviously clearly affected you and inspired you. Sarah, talk to me about that.
Well, I think even before all these protests began, we always tried to talk about the situation of women in Iran, because many people in Italy don't know how many things Iranian women can't do. But when everything started last September, obviously the minimum we could do was just participate and try to amplify their voices, and clearly it influenced our lives. And we grew up with our father telling us some crazy things about the Islamic Republic, which we sometimes believed him, but we sometimes didn't, because my father tends to be, I don't know, very Persian in his way of telling us stories. So sometimes we just felt as if he was like really emotional talking to us. And so we wondered if it was actually true or not. And we discovered that many things he told us were actually true. Like when you hear many students telling you like things that sound like coming out of a horror film.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh my God, so that all the things our father told us are actually true. So it was, well, at the beginning it was a shock, because we are sitting in our home, comfortably sitting, saying that we can't go and visit Iran, but at the same time there are people who, well, their relatives are, I don't know,
Yeah.
getting tortured or something like that. And we met so many girls who had literally, they'd been through so much, and so it was a great shock. But I think we realized that the minimum we could do was to participate to every single protest and to continue amplifying their voices.
One of the themes that was coming up on our show regularly as we dealt with the uprising week after week through all those months, and I'd like to say, I don't mean to say it in the past tense. I mean it's still ongoing, but it's morphing in different ways for now. But was this sense of something I felt myself as well, as the same as you guys, a kid an Iranian who grew up in the diaspora, this sense of connection that we feel to what's going on in Iran and to being Iranian, etc. And Sarah, you'd written this very powerful, I thought, post. I think it was on Instagram, and it was in October, and you ended by saying something like, "I could be, or I am Mahsa Amini." Which I think everybody listening who is of an Iranian background around the world will understand. But it is quite interesting as a kid who grew up in England and Italy and who's never been to Iran that you feel that way. Can you speak to that?
Well, yes, of course. Well, we have cousins in Iran, and well, a cousin of us was arrested because, I don't know, her sleeve wasn't long enough or something. Well, they didn't torture her. Fortunately, her father went and he brought her home. But when we think of that, well, the first thing we actually thought, well, oh my God, so our cousin could have been Mahsa Amini, or we could have been Mahsa Amini. But I think that talking about it, many Italians that have nothing to do with Iranian culture, they thought about it and said, well, then we actually all could be Mahsa Amini. So actually, when I wrote that post, I was just thinking, because sometimes Italians think of Iran like somewhere very far away to where we live. And so the reason why I wrote that post, I think, if I remember clearly, I wrote, well, if you love to dance, then you have to stand by Iranian women. And then I went on and on, and well, if you like to ride a bike, if you like to sing, if you like to play music, and because it was just so many simple things that Iranian women can't do. And I thought, maybe like this, they realize how basic this is. It's like, it's really basic human rights.
You actually said I mean, you said, let me quote you, if you believe anyone who loves dancing or singing or freedom has a duty to support the Iranian people, which I thought was an interesting word. It's a duty. You feel the duty to be involved.
Oh yeah, I think everybody should feel the duty to be involved. I mean, it would be a shame to sit down and stay in silence. I mean, I don't think that's only for Iranian women. I mean, I think that for many things. Like, often I notice that people tend to be indifferent towards many things, and we shouldn't. I'm not only referring to like Iranian women. I'm referring to many things.
Layla, so many of us were inspired by the young women and men in Iran who were expressing such bravery and losing their lives, and who continue to be in prison and all of that. Could you talk to me from your perspective of the inspiration that you felt, if you can put it that way, that inspired you? There's that picture of you guys. You did this concert you did in January, and you're wearing white dresses with, I guess, mock blood on them to kind of, and this was around the time of the first executions of protesters, the two guys that they executed at first in January. Talk to me about how this so moved you.
I think we were moved for several reasons. The first reason was that we have so much frustration inside us because we have never been able to go to Iran. So our grandmother passed away without us being able to meet her. We only ever met her on Skype. So clearly that left such a level of frustration, which I mean, I don't know if that will ever be able to go, really. And second thing, we grew up with our father telling us, especially when we were children, maybe he kind of lost hope as we grew older, but when we were children, he would talk to us about Iran. He would show us Iranian carpets. He would show us these beautiful places, and he would always say his last phrase would always be, "We will one day go to Iran. Iran will be free one day, and I will take you to Iran." So I mean, clearly, when this started happening, I mean, we felt so involved. The level of emotion was so high that, you know, we suddenly felt like maybe that dream was near, maybe something was going to happen.
Right.
But aside from that, I think it was so moving to see how risky it was for Iranian women to actually go into the streets and demonstrate, and the fact that they were doing it despite the risks. I mean, for us, there were really no risks involved. I mean, we grew up in a country where protesting is democracy. It's the basis of democracy. So it's something absolutely normal to do. And it's actually a duty. Like, we should all protest for things. So our first thought was, I mean, if they are doing this and the level of risk is so insanely high for them, we should be doing 10 times more. We really, really should be amplifying their voices. And also, I mean, we should be trying to explain, in our case, Italian people and the Italian government, that what this country is doing, what this government is doing, is not okay. If Italy thinks it's a democratic country, they should not allow the Islamic Republic to have an embassy in Rome, because the way they are operating is a criminal way of operating. It's not compatible with democracy or with any very basic human rights. So I mean, if everybody wanted to be coherent, they should just shut down every Iranian embassy, and also just stop every relationship with the Iranian government instantly.
Yeah, that's been the basic requirement of a lot of people who've been speaking out around the world, and the families of PS 752, et cetera, who just say, call back the ambassadors, at least close the embassies, show that, try and isolate Iran. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened, and the European Union has not put the IRGC on the terrorist list, and all of that, as you know. But the struggle continues. Sarah, you've talked about wanting to inspire young women in Iran who are interested in music. I'm curious if you've heard from Iranians on your social media, whatever, inside Iran, who see you as role models.
Well, we see them as role models. I mean, I think that we think they are role models. I mean, well, on social media, we follow many Iranian musicians. We organize these music courses during the summer, and this is how we met so many incredible Iranian musicians. And we saw some of these girls, especially girls, growing up, so going from teenagers to girls in their 20s, and some of them are just a few years younger than me. And I think, I don't know, it's so inspiring when you think that in Iran, women can't play as a solo performer. But you see how incredibly good they are playing. Like, there are some incredible musicians, and they never stop fighting. Like, you see all these videos on their social media of them playing so beautifully, despite the fact that they can't play as a soloist in their country. So I think they are role models for us.
I don't know if you heard, we had Mahsa Mortazavi on, who of course is a great cellist. She's in LA now, and she was actually touring with Gugush. But she told a story about being in Iran. The sort of breaking point for her when she left Iran was being denied to play with the orchestra, and she was supposed to be a soloist, and literally on the night of, they said, no, you're not even allowed to go on stage, and she kind of knew that was the end for her of staying inside Iran as much as she wanted to. So yes, but I think you're both being quite modest too. I'm sure that there are young Iranian girls or others.
There are many Iranian children and young musicians who definitely like coming out here, and we love having them, clearly, and also just watch them blossom. So
well, you're doing amazing things, and it wouldn't be a surprise if you are role models for them. And just before we end off, I mean, to end off on this note of paying it forward, and you're interested in in sort of teaching and education. From what I understand, it's been always your dream to have an educational academy of some kind, and you're really doing that. But you're also doing it with an environmental element. Tell me about this Eco Academy. How do I say it in Italian? Eco Academia?
Eco Accademia.
Eco Academia. I always sound like I'm ordering pasta when I prosciutto, formaggio. Yeah, okay. Sorry, please.
Well, I mean, as you said, we've always had that vibe. We've always wanted to have our own academy. We've been organizing courses and master courses for a long time. But essentially, we wanted to do something for the environment as well. I mean, we clearly appreciate nature a lot. We try to do what we can for the environment. I mean, we're both vegan, and we try to be aware of what is going on as far as environmental issues are concerned. So basically, we suddenly got this idea. We said, no, we've got to do something different. It's not going to just be an academy. We need to do an eco academy. So basically, the idea is to have an eco-sustainable academy. We bought a piece of land which is very beautiful. It's in the countryside near Rome, amongst these beautiful hills, amongst olive trees and fig trees and cherry trees. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to basically have an academy which is sort of spread out. So little wooden houses, wooden because they will be eco-sustainable, and also with solar panels, so that we're using renewable energy. And the idea is to have them just floating on the land, spread out, so that each little house can represent a different instrument. So, for example, one for cello, one for piano, one for flute, for guitar, for chamber music. And that way students will be able to study music in a different environment. But also I think it would be very nice for artists, to have artist residencies and people coming out to actually find a bond with nature and create, compose or rehearse in a different environment. And well, in our project there is also a stage it's quite unique really, because the backdrop is quite special. It's got these beautiful mountains, these hills and these trees, and the idea is to have open air concerts in a place which has an amazing acoustics, by the way.
Wow.
Because it's down in a valley. And as you can tell, this is her favorite subject.
Well, it's amazing. It sounds like a fantasy. What it's in these hills. It's beautiful.
Well, okay, we're very involved in this project. I mean, we met lots of people who are interested and who are actually helping us, who are working on it. I mean, clearly, we will need lots of financial support to be able to do this, but we're moving in different directions. And I mean, we're on it. We already bought the land, and believe it or not, we actually already had lots of little cellists coming into the land. We've already done masterclasses there.
So it's a music academy, but it's a music academy, but it's in this setting, and it's environmentally and ecologically friendly. Do the cellists, for example, have to be vegans, or can they?
No,
okay.
It's important.
Thank God. All right. Yes.
Okay, look, we're not imposing anything on anybody, but clearly the idea is we're going to offer them some vegan food when they're there, so they might taste it, they might think it's not so bad after all.
Right.
To offer a new perspective. I mean, people have to, they have to experiment and get to know new things.
Of course.
Okay,
where we
want to come and see us, we will accept you even if you're not vegan.
Well, I was going to enroll, and then I thought I'm going to have to give up kubide. I'm not going to be able to eat kebab anymore if I come and join the Eco Academy. Yeah. But where are we at with the Eco Academy? Is it actually, because I've seen pictures, it looks like it's already happening, or are you still in the building phase?
Well, I mean, it's like the musical part is happening. As I said, we actually bought the land, and we have a team of people, of architects, geometers, who are actually working on the final project. We have building permission, so lots of bureaucratical issues have been going on, which clearly take time and also take lots of energy. The building hasn't started. I mean, we've had a stage, we actually had a very beautiful event last year for Nowruz. We basically had a musical Nowruz
we thought the best way to celebrate the start of spring would be like amongst nature. So we had lots of fantastic musicians coming to perform there, and it was very nice because lots of people came, and clearly most of them were Italians, and I think they really they appreciated the circumstance, the celebration, but also the environment, and hopefully the music. So no, the building hasn't started, but essentially we are also working on trying to understand how to fund building.
It really is a great pleasure to get to talk to both of you, and I'm not surprised people are so enamored of you and with your talents and what you guys are doing. Thank you for making the time today in between all of that you've got going on. I wish this was an interview before a concert so that now we'd get to hear your concert, but we'll have to do that eventually. Before I let you go, are there tour plans at all? Will you come to Canada and the United States and different places where people are listening to us right now?
Well, there are no plans for Canada just now, but maybe the United States. We're working on things. We'll have to talk about it soon.
All right. Helpful hint: if you're speaking to a Canadian, don't say there's no plans for Canada. We're going to go to the United States. It's just across the border. You can come to Canada too. You know.
Oh my God! I agree 100%. We have to work on it.
Please.
If you want to invite us to Canada, we will come immediately.
Even just tot off and say, of course we're going to come. Aziz said, no problem. Don't. I can't believe the answer was, well, no plans for Canada, but the United States, now that's where we're going to go.
Okay, so there's a problem. We recently met a Canadian girl who told us, who spoke about the insane temperatures in Canada, and we suffer the cold so badly.
And this woman was scared.
So badly. She literally scared us.
Right.
Well, our father lived in Canada when he was young.
Really?
And yes,
okay.
he lived in Montreal. And he told us some fantastic things, but even he was like, it was too cold. And but
we can
what century? You don't have to. This is not the 20. Look up Google Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, and look at the weather right now. It's fine. It's beautiful. It's sunny.
Now it's fine.
You don't have to tour in January.
Okay, I'm on Google.
And Italy still has. I mean, the north of Italy gets cold. I mean, you guys are not. We have 4 seasons, but I won't. But yes, maybe you come in the warm months, and when you're visiting the U.S., you could make a plan to come by Canada as well.
We would absolutely love it, really. So it's going to.
Layla and Sarah, it's such a pleasure. I don't want to keep you too long. I'm once again grateful. Thank you. I hope you stay in touch. I hope you do tour, and I can't wait to hear more about the Eco Academy as it grows over the years, because it's just fantastic.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was a pleasure.
Say hi to your dad.
Thank you. We definitely will.
He sounds like, I mean, not to leave your mom out, but he sounds like such a character. I can't wait to meet him one day. The next interview has to be with him,
Right.
Oh, you need more than an hour if you want to have an interview with him. It will take at least 2.5 hours. At least.
The many sides of Roqe Shirvani, yes.
Just 1 second. Let me tell you.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
More sounds from the Shirvani Sisters. That was really fun getting to talk to them. Layla and Sarah Shirvani. Do follow them if you can. This is Roqe, episode 288. And it's time for our next featured guest, another superstar. My next featured guest today is an acclaimed Iranian-British artist residing in London, England. Afshin Naghouni has achieved worldwide recognition for his vibrant, imaginative, and grand paintings. Afshin was born and raised in Iran, where he received his training in oil painting at a young age. Remarkably, he was the winner of several regional and national painting competitions by the age of 12. In 1997, at the age of 28, Afshin immigrated to England, and London has been his home for the majority of his adult life. He holds a postgraduate degree from London Metropolitan University and has showcased his work extensively both in the UK and around the globe. He has always been outspoken about human rights issues in Iran and has his own story with this Islamic Republic regime. I should note he's also a man with particularly good taste in football clubs as a longtime Arsenal fan. And right now, Afshin Naghouni joins me from London, England. Hello, sir.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm so well. I'm so happy to have you on the program. Thanks for doing this.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know that I face a dilemma in doing an interview with you. Should we spend quality time talking about Iran, your life story, your remarkable talent, your work, or spend the better part of an hour talking about the current Arsenal lineup and prospects for Premier League domination? It's not an easy choice.
I think let's leave the football talk out for now.
All right. Well,
there's a private thing between you and I. We discussed later.
We'll leave that for WhatsApp. Yeah. Okay. I should actually, I want to start on a relatively serious note, having said what I've said. I do want to talk about you as an artist. I want to talk about your art. On the way to that, we've recently passed the 1-year anniversary of the uprising that was massive for a while in Iran and for Iranians around the world in that effort to achieve freedom and democracy in Iran. The last time we spoke on Roqe, Afshin, we had you on for a brief hit. This was at the height of the uprising, where you exclaimed that you were very confident the regime was falling this time. How are you feeling with where things are at after 1 year?
Well, I'm still confident that nothing is going to get back to where it was before the murder of Mahsa Amini. I mean, a lot of things have happened since, and I'm sure that this is something that is going to be going on for a long time, and nothing is going to go back to where it was. Absolutely, I'm sure of that. But we're talking about a regime that's been in power for over 40 years, and it's not going to be overthrown overnight. But I think everything is in progress right now.
So we don't count you as amongst those who are disappointed that the movement has somehow hit a lull or isn't as vibrant in terms of the numbers in the streets as it was a few months ago.
No, I'm not, actually, no. I'm still very optimistic about the change. How this change is going to be, how much of a change and how it's going to happen, I don't know. But things cannot carry on the way they are. So
we had the 1-year anniversary recently. We had a bunch of people on the show for this special, and I was asking them what lessons do you think we've learned over the last year? And a lot of folks said the lesson was that we need to be, at least those of us in the diaspora, in an effort to help those in Iran, support those in Iran, we need to achieve greater unity. It's not something that we've done the best job of over the last year, especially in recent months. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I absolutely agree with the notion that we need unity. One must not forget in the 1978 uprising, the Khomeini's biggest achievement, in one way or another, I don't know how it happened, was to get everybody behind him. All different points of views, all different political orientations. Created a unity there, and I feel that without that kind of unity, it's going to be very difficult.
Yes, and yet when it comes to whether it's different opposition factions or people who are supporting different leaders or so-called opposition leaders, etc. They felt like there was a golden moment in the fall where everybody was on the same page, and it doesn't quite feel that's the case now.
I don't know what to say about it really, basically, because I'm watching from outside and what's happening, and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed with the Iranian opposition outside Iran. If anything going to happen, it has to happen through unity.
Yeah, I mean, I should note you're not just a pundit here. I mean, part of your investment in the uprising and what's been happening in the opposition to this current situation in Iran is that you have had your own spectacular and horrific encounters with the Islamic Republic regime. And for many people listening or watching us, they may know you are in a wheelchair and that the events that put you in that wheelchair are related to this regime. It's always difficult, Afshin, when doing an interview with someone like you, because one wants to focus on your spectacular artwork and talents and not whether you're physically able or Iranian or whatever else. But it is all germane here. Are you okay telling that whole story today?
Well, I'm okay with whatever you want to. I'm okay to talk about whatever, you think you'd like to talk about. I'm fine about it. I'm fine with it. Yeah.
First of all, you were born in Ahvaz, right? You're a Khuzestan kid, is that right?
Yeah.
And the story is that you're this kid in Ahvaz in the early 70s who's already considered a child prodigy, and that you started your oil paintings by the age of 9. How is it that you took this up at such a young age, and how and when did those around you spot this gift that you had?
Well, I mean, I've been painting and drawing since I was a lot younger than 9. So, and my parents recognized that in me, and as a reward for getting good marks at school, I was allowed to go to painting classes in the summer. So that's how it all happened.
So, so first of all, do you remember why and when you were drawn to drawing?
I don't know. I don't actually remember, but it's always something has always been with me. My dad wasn't bad at drawing either, so he used to sit next to me when I was, 4 or 5 years old, and draw things for me, and I really liked it, and I was, really enjoyed it. I mean, spending the time with father, and at the same time, those magic he was creating on paper. I mean, I got taken by it. So,
do you remember when you realized you're good at this, or when others told you, at least?
I realized at school when I compared what I used to do at primary school with other kids. Yeah, and I said, I'm something different here. I'm doing something different than to be everybody else.
And based on what you said about the summer school, I'm assuming that when it came to other subjects, you didn't have the same enthusiasm, and then when it came to painting and drawing, it felt like playtime. It didn't feel like work.
Absolutely. I mean, painting always been, even now as a professional, it's for me, it's playtime. And I really, I wake up in the morning, I look forward to coming to the studio and start playing.
Wow.
That's always been the case. And at school, no, I wasn't that enthusiastic about, schools. Even at the exams, even if I was very prepared for the exams, I would just answer the questions at the exams. Enough questions I would answer to get them pass mark, and I would leave the room. I wouldn't even look at the rest of the questions on the exam. So,
was your family supportive of you being an artist, or were they the Persian kind of become a doctor or a dentist or something first, and then you can play with your art?
It was like most of other Persian families that they wanted to become an engineer or a doctor or something, but I think I was too much of a hot-headed force for them to want to fight what I wanted to do.
By your early 20s, I mean, you'll have won national painting competitions, and you're getting widely recognized for your art. How would you describe your life by the late 1980s, say, and early 90s in Iran?
Late 80s, I was still at school when I did my military service and everything. But I mean, I don't know, painting has always been something that was part of my life. I've never looked at it as a profession. I never looked at it as a something extra that I was doing. It was just, it was part of being me and my life. That as I would go to school, as I would have my lunch and dinner, I would paint as well. It was something like that for me.
But did you think of it as something that you were going to be able to make a living at?
I never thought about it that way either until much, much later. I mean, even in my, teenage years and my early 20s, we were a group of young people that were close and friends, and they were all into art, different medium and disciplines, musicians, filmmakers. We did what we did for fun. We never thought what's going to happen or what's going to come out of it.
It makes sense to me when you say that it's always felt like play and not work for you, in terms of it's been a positive activity. There was an interview you did a few years ago where you said you have the paintings in your head even before they're on the canvas. Like you can't keep up with it. What's in your head, it's always there. Does it change? I'm thinking about musicians I've spoken to, or even in my own life, where if you've got a blank canvas that you're painting for yourself, so to speak, it feels like positive creative work. But if someone else is commissioning something, or if you're doing something for somebody else or someone, that doesn't.
And for a couple of years before my accident, I was working at an advertising company in Tehran as a designer in the atelier. And it was, not easy. Let's put it this way. It was the worst period of my creative life, if you like. It was, working for someone else, being creative at the same time, is the hardest thing in the world for me.
And you don't do a lot of commissions now, do you?
I don't do at all.
So if somebody comes to you and says, I'll give you $50 million to paint a Reza Shah for me,
everybody has a price. Everybody has a price, and not necessarily the amount. You have to get the currency right first. And then we talk about yes.
Right. You don't do any commissions, but right. I got you. I got you. And let that be a lesson for those listening who want an Afshin Naghouni commissioned work in their home. There's make an offer.
I believe everybody in life has a price. Not everybody can be bought with money, but as long as you get the currency right, everybody has a price, in my opinion.
Interesting. All right. So what happened when you were 24 that would lead to the breaking of your spinal cord that would effectively change your life? Tell me I've read about the story. I've known you for a while as a friend. I've never even asked you personally. I mean, what was that? What happened that night?
Well, it was my friend's birthday party, and I arrived quite late, about near midnight. I arrived at the party because I had other things to do that night, as far as I remember.
Sorry, this was in Tehran? Where was it?
It was in Tehran, yes.
Tehran.
And shortly after I arrived, the party was raided by the guards, Revolutionary Guards, or I don't know, Niri Intizami, or what they call it. And a group of us tried to run away from the top of the roof. And I fell from the 6th floor straight to the ground. And I damaged my spinal cord.
And this was, you were trying to elude or escape, I guess, Basij or Postarona, I don't know what they would be called at that point, but these police officials who were coming to do what?
Well, they would, obviously having a party, mixed party with men and women, alcohol, and that sort of thing is completely music. It was illegal in Iran, and it is still, I think. There were huge consequences. If you were arrested in one of those parties, you could be expelled from the university. You could be get beaten lashes, and a lot of things could happen. A lot of things.
Right, but I think it's probably important to note here for non-Iranians listening, or people who aren't necessarily or watching, or people who aren't necessarily familiar with the nature of the situation in Iran. You weren't necessarily doing anything that would be immoral or illegal in any other place. I mean, you're basically gathering in a co-ed way, right?
Yeah. I mean, nothing extraordinary, really, by the Western standards. As a simple friends partying together, having a good time, basically.
When you jump and you fall and
I didn't jump, my friend. I didn't jump.
You fell. You didn't jump. You fell. And how soon after you land do you know that something serious has happened to you?
My memory is very fuzzy about that night, and you get to the point because people present at the time, they tell you the story of what happened over and over many times. Sometimes you just confused. I am confused sometimes myself that which part of this is my own actual memory.
Wow.
And which part is what others have told me about that night, and it's become my memory. So I'm very fuzzy about it myself.
What were the days and weeks after that like for you?
Well, it was very difficult. I mean, I as soon as I woke up in the hospital, I knew what had happened, and
you did. In other words, it wasn't one of those things where they don't tell you that you may end up in a wheelchair. This was something that you knew right away.
Yes, I knew right away. I knew I was paralyzed. What I didn't know was that was it going to be a permanent thing? Was there a cure for it? Was there any treatment I could go through? That's what I didn't know, which I understood in the months and weeks and after the events, that it's going to be something permanent. So.
How angry were you?
Very angry. I mean, I was angry. I was upset. I was. I wasn't in a good place. You imagine 1 minute you are one of the liveliest people that you probably know, and do everything you want, even in the circumstances that we had. We used to live in Iran. With all those difficulties and the oppression and everything, we tried to live how we wanted to live. And the next moment you wake up and you can't do any of that. You're at the mercy of your bed and the people around you to just be able to eat, even, feed yourself. I mean, at the beginning, I couldn't even move my arms, so.
And this is probably a dumb question, but there doesn't end up being any accountability. Like nobody, the government or the regime or the police don't ever come, compensate or somehow or explain that this has been their fault or anything like that, huh?
No, actually, very much the opposite. I'm told that when I was being taken to hospital. With an ambulance, and the police car was following us everywhere, and a couple of hospitals refused me. One part of the reason being they see the police car and becoming a bit anxious, and at the end, my dad has to bribe them to just leave us alone.
Wow!
Tell them to go away, basically.
And one of the really horrible parts about your story is that it's not unique. this happens in Iran, and there was a young guy that this had something of a similar story. I mean, he died recently, a month or two ago.
After my incident, another guy had a similar thing, fell from the 11th floor, and he died straight away. Ali.
What's it like for you when you hear about this still happening? People, basically for no reason, for and just in terms of having to evade the authorities in Iran.
It makes me angry, even though I have worked many years on myself to not to get angry with anything, and I'm very successful with that. That's one of the very few things that makes me really angry.
How did you do that work?
Do what work?
The work to not be angry. I mean, that's a. What's the secret, or what was it for you?
There is no secret to it, Jian. It's just you reach a point in your life that. Okay, let me put it this way: when you've been to hell and back, and if you somehow manage to escape that hell and not bring any of it out with you on your way, leave it behind on your way out, then there is not much in life that can phase you. I think a lot of anger, a lot of hate is born out of fear. And when the fear is gone, it takes a lot for someone to get angry or hate anybody. I think when you reach that point, it even affects you on every level. It affects your relations. It affects how you are with other people, how you look at life, how you go through life. Yeah. It affects all that on many different levels.
But you are just going to hell, as you say, having been through hell, doesn't necessarily follow that you're going to be able to come out of that. I mean, there's some people who just stay in hell. I mean, they succumb to it, whether it's via alcoholism or drug use or whatever, any way to cope with where they've been. You're a very balanced personality in terms of my experience with it. Even when we're talking about Arsenal, I'll be like, we should get rid of this player, and you'll be like, actually, let's give him a few more games, and and I wonder, I mean, do you do meditation? What is the way you get that balance?
I don't do anything special, really. I really don't. I think I've been lucky. I've always been lucky with people around me, with my family and my friends. I have always been blessed with good friends that they didn't leave me on my own at even in my darkest times and darkest moments.
Let me ask you about your art and this significant change that happened at 24, because I would think that there would have been a moment where you thought, I don't know if I can paint again. I don't know what's going to happen to not just my craft, but the love of my life in terms of what you do. You've talked about how physical limitations changed the very way that you paint. When did you realize it's okay for Afshin Naghouni to have a different style?
I never thought about it being okay. You adapt with the tools you have. The certain tools were not at my disposal anymore, but I had new tools, so I had to make use of those. I mean, it was the first question I asked my doctor. Very first question. I didn't ask if I could walk again. I asked my doctor if I could paint again. So when something is
and what did your doctor say?
He said with practice and exercise and physiotherapy, yes. And that was a relief. And when something is that important to you, you always find a way. When there's a will, there's a way.
Tell me about how your art adapted or adjusted based on what you had to start doing physically to make the paintings you wanted.
Well, earlier on, I realized I cannot be that detailed as I used to be because I didn't have enough movement in my fingers. I didn't have enough movement in my wrist. So most of the movements are coming from your elbow. That automatically forces you to become more expressive with the work you do. And you adapt to it and you try to make the most of it.
Sorry. Less detail means you have to be more expressive? Explain that to me. What does it mean?
It means that the work you do, has a lot more action to it. It gets more of your body involved in creating the work. You know, what you have in your head, I mean, the painting, being able to, you have to remember, this was very earlier on in my career. Very young, very unlearned, very still trying to learn what I'm doing, and I still am, but very early days. So I'm used to kind of realistic drawings and paintings, and that's not available. That ability is not available to me anymore. Then you have to look for other ways to express yourself because you cannot be that detailed.
It boggles the mind, and I don't, not to be cute about this, but people love the artwork that you create these days. They love these big pieces that you make. You are beloved. You are celebrated as a painter, and one might make the case that you would not be making those pieces of art had you not been through this traumatic event. It's how do you process that in your mind?
Probably I would never know because my path has changed from that moment. So one can only speculate. I think that's irrelevant. I am where I am. All of us are where we are because of what have experienced in life and what have we gone through in life to reach a certain point in our life that we are now. So I am a result of everything that I have experienced and I have lived through. And looking at it that way, I have not much to complain, you know.
What was the precipitant of the immigration to the UK in 1997? What was the moment or the reason why at that point you said, okay, I'm off, here I go?
Before I came here, I reached a point through going through all that 2.5 to 3 years of anger and sadness and hopelessness and helplessness and feeling that this is the end of the world, the end of life. And suddenly you reach a point, okay, you think to yourself, this is it. You know, you can sit in the corner and feel sorry for yourself for the rest of your life, or you just pick yourself up and see what you can do with what you got. And from that moment on, there was only one option. And I had to make the best of the situation and everything I have at my disposal. And to do that, the most clear option for me was to leave. And I am grateful that it happens so easily and so quickly for me to leave and come to the UK.
It's quite an audacious move. I mean, it's an audacious move for anyone to pick up from one part of the world and go to another. But the way you do it, I mean, the story is you arrive in England with a wheelchair and 350 pounds in your pocket. That ain't easy.
You've done your homework.
Yes, you underestimate me, young Jedi. But I mean that's I would imagine there were some people around you, even loved ones who've been supporting you, who've been there for you, who are counseling you at that point to not pick up and leave to the UK. Would that be true?
A lot of my family, I said they said you have no chance of getting accepted for asylum and things like that. You know, you're not political. You don't belong in a political party. Your life is not in danger. Your asylum application is not going to be successful. You're wasting your time and this and that. And I arrived here and with my father, and we spent all the money we had brought with us, and to the point that there was only £500 left. And that's it. It's time for me to go. Here's 350 for you, 150 for me, going back, back to Iran. What shall we do? I just picked up my passport and I went to the Home Office and I said, I want to apply for asylum. Yeah. That's how it happened.
It's a pretty remarkable act. I mean, do you look back at that and think, wow, I was I was some kind of kid in his 20s to I would call that courageous. I would call that bold.
I would call it having no other choice.
But you do have a choice. You do have a choice to return to the comfort of your family and your surroundings in Iran, right?
Yeah, but what happens to living your life? That wouldn't be a life anymore for me with the situation I was in. I had to take a chance, take a risk, and see what I can do with what I had at my disposal at the time. And don't forget, I mean, when we're talking about these things, sometimes I feel bad talking about it because I'm not the only one who's
of course
paid the price for having to live through Islamic Republic. I can't think of any Iranian that one way or another is not affected by it. They had to make difficult choices, and I'm one of many who say, okay, maybe a price I paid more than some, but it's a lot less than a lot of other people who pay the price for.
But you do have a look. I mean, there are people who, and I consider that these major, sometimes traumatic, but profound acts when someone picks up from Tehran today and comes to Toronto, but they tend to do it. For some, it's a little less of a bumpy ride. I mean, you end up, as you say, applying for political asylum and living in a nursing home for 2 years. What would you say you most learned from that period?
I think the most important lesson I learned during that period was that there is life after this. And I can get through it. And it cannot get any worse than this. If I can get through this, I get through anything.
Well,
don't forget, I was at the time I had nothing. I mean, I was in a nursing home. I would buy cardboard and cheap paints, and I put paint in the nursing home, in the nursing home in the gym, and I would take my paintings to the town, on the street, against the wall, on the pavements, and sell them for £10 and £15. So when you go through that, then there is not much else that can really scare you. After
do you
that,
think you, at any level at that point, believed that you would be where you are today? I mean, this world-renowned painter.
Actually, thank you for the compliment, but another thing I just learned to not look too far ahead, and that's again another very, very important
and you're still that way.
I am very much so. I mean, I have even trouble planning my next 6 months. I mean, there are the moments in life that you're living those moments. And you're experiencing and you're learning. And if you want to move your attention to a period of time in the future that it hasn't come yet, it hasn't come to existence, and it may never come. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but you miss the moments that you're living at the time that you're in it.
But there's a lot of business help books, etc., that would tell you to have a 5-year plan and to have a proper business plan.
I'm sorry, I swear on your
I didn't hear what you said. You got cut off. Say what did you say?
I said fuck that.
All right. Well, glad it's worked for you. But there's something really beautiful about your story and who what one thing you've remained true to is you. I mean, it almost sounds, again, forgive me for it sounds cliche, but you you're an artist who just wants to paint what you want to paint, and you've stayed consistent with that. And if that can lead you to a good life and to be able to have the means and all of that and the material goods and all that, that's great. But you're not really willing to compromise, even though everyone has a price. What you really want to do, it's quite beautiful. I mean, and it is the opposite almost of what we're counseled, especially as Iranians, to be when we're kids. You should focus on getting a good job so you have security and you have you're an engineer, and then you're going to be set for life, and then you can have your picket fence and partner and all of that stuff, right? And you've kind of thrown all of that out.
Well, I didn't throw it out. It was thrown out for me, because now I've learned tomorrow I might not be here.
Oh, we all know that.
Yeah. And I actually lived it. I mean, when that happened to me, 1 inch, couple of centimeters here and there, I would have been dead. That's what I was told.
What was the turning point where you go from an artist selling paintings on the street for art supplies and cigarettes to being feted at global exhibitions and selling pieces for thousands of dollars? Can you pinpoint a time where things shift for you?
Absolutely, I can pinpoint that the moment it happened. First of all, I applied for a grant for a charity here in 2000 in London, and for that charity to give me that grant, which in the end they did it as a no interest loan instead.
That's the Princess Trust.
They could, Princess Trust. Yeah, what happened was, if they agreed to give you this loan or this grant, they would have to appoint a mentor to you, and because they didn't have a mentor for the kind of a business I wanted to do, which was art business, it was alien to them. It was not quite sure I was going to get this grant or not. And what happened, suddenly they called me and said, well, we found a mentor for you. Come and meet this guy at the Princess Trust office. And I went there, and the guy sitting there was very much interested in my work and liked my work, and very enthusiastic. It was a gentleman called John Ritchie, which was Guy Ritchie's father. And, I was like, my jaw dropped. And this gentleman, he was he's in a nursing home at the moment. He's not very well, very old at the moment. One of the kindest people I've ever met. I mean, the only lovable conservative I know. So, and he was instrumental in me getting into this exhibition. Annual exhibition every year for charity. It was for charity, and I was there for good 4 or 5 years, every year exhibiting 5 pieces, and I didn't sell anything. And he always, made sure that they brought me back the next year, even though after 2 years, if you don't sell, they will replace you with someone else. And one day, John and I sitting at the exhibition, and as usual, I'm thinking, I'm not going to sell anything. This gentleman came, introduced himself. I said, my name is so-and-so. I'm the director of the so-and-so gallery in Bond Street. And I'm here with this lady. I'm advising her to buy, and we want to buy your piece. And they bought it. And on the way out, he gave me his card and said, call me, we can work together. And that moment completely changed my career.
That's a prescription for keep going for artists out there, right?
Yeah. I was so close to giving up, and I said to John, John, this is not working. I'm not going to exhibit next year. And he said, no, dear boy. I'll never forget those words. Dear boy, if you haven't sold yet, the right person hasn't been in the room.
Afshin, you seem very prolific as an artist. Are you?
Not enough. No. I do work a lot, and I think I still should do more.
Do you have a daily routine?
Well, I come here to the studio every day. I'm here around midday, and I'm here for, I don't know, as long as it takes. 8, 9, 10.
You come every day regardless of, I mean, you go every day and you paint every day?
Even if I'm not in the mood for painting, I come here every day, yes.
And what happens when you're not in the mood for painting? Do you still paint?
I play more, yeah.
You do what?
I play. I put the music on and get some canvases and start playing with the paint and play and play and play until, I get in the mood.
So
sometimes I come and do nothing, basically. I just sit there and look at the wall paintings and listen to music.
So I don't know what the painting equivalent of writer's block is, but do you get that? Do you get days where you're sitting in front of the canvas and nothing's coming out?
No. I haven't, at least for many, many, many years. I always have ideas in my head. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood to execute them.
I spoke to an artist a couple of years ago. There seems to be different schools of thought on this. I mean, there's definitely people who say, I don't go to my studio, or I don't sit there if I'm not feeling inspired. And, the songwriter who hasn't gone to their, or the writer who hasn't gone to their, to type out anything in a month because they're not feeling the inspiration. And then there's others who say, you got to go and put yourself there. There's an artist I spoke to a couple of years ago, and he has a very, very regimented schedule. He's very successful. Regimented schedule. Every day at 10 a.m. I'm going to be sitting there, and I force myself to do that, and eventually things come out.
Writing, there's a thing called free writing. You just write down anything that comes to your head. I do the equivalent of that. I just splash paint is whatever comes to you, do it then. And I think the only thing that, if you're not inspired, the only thing that can inspire you is working. Yeah, well, that's I cannot imagine myself sitting at home because I'm not inspired to work. I have to come here and do something.
Just do extreme moods like being very happy or being very angry animate your ability to paint? I mean, is it cathartic like that?
Jian, one of the things that I feel that has happened to me over the years since the incident, and sometimes it worried me about myself, is that except once that I felt both, all these years I don't feel extremely happy about anything, or I don't feel extremely sad and upset about anything either. I haven't felt that being overjoyed with something, or over upset, or over sad about something. I said, except
and
once.
You don't take a medication that neutralizes your moods or anything, do you?
No. I haven't had any medication. I haven't had a minute of therapy. Nothing.
That's interesting. That is a bit alarming, or maybe it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, as I said, I was really worried about it until it happened once, and I thought, okay, it is there. I can get really happy.
But is the painting cathartic? I mean, is it an expression of what you're feeling in the moment, or is it more physically just what comes out? Where your body goes is what ends up on the canvas.
I think to an extent it's a combination of both, because I could have planned my work. I mean, I think about a concept. I conceptualize before I start painting. I sketch, I draw the ideas, I put them into paper and experiment with them. So I know what I'm going to do. But when you start on the canvas with the paint, then I have the overall idea in my head and I worked it out in my head. But when I'm in front of the canvas, then I let my intuition and to an extent, sometimes my subconscious take over and go along with whatever I want to do at the time, having in the back of my head the overall idea.
Your paintings have a lot of layers. Forgive me if I don't get the lexicon right here. Let me try and explain where I'm going to get to the question. They have layers, and your pieces are expansive, and they feel sometimes quite complicated, other times playful, but always very rich and often bursts of color layered. They're not the kind of pieces that in my mind's eye can be dashed off in a couple of hours. When do you know you are finished a painting?
If I'm honest, I really don't. It gets to the stage that I think, okay, I don't want to work on this anymore. I got to move on.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? You don't have a start and finish. It's an emotion.
Yes. It gets to a point, and sometimes I'm kind of wary of overworking as well. So I kind of try to remind myself, okay, don't overwork. Just leave it as it is. These areas, and I carry on painting and working. I try to stay somewhat true to the plan I had from before I started the canvas. Never happens quite that way, but it gets to the point. I say, okay, enough. I need to move on.
Do you have the equivalent of like an executive producer or an editor or an agent or somebody who can come and say, "Stop! No, this one's done."
No, but even if I did, I wouldn't listen. So, it's not fun.
You're not easy.
I have agents that I work with, and but they never ever tell me how to do it, because it has opposite effects. They won't.
No, maybe not how to do it, but I mean, in the same way as a writer would have an editor or somebody would have a producer or somebody to help. I mean, it's like as a musician, you'll keep doing vocal takes until somebody tells you to stop, because you never think it's quite there, right? So I was wondering if you had somebody like that in your life.
No, I don't actually. No. I do have people in my life that I respect their opinion about art, and I'm constantly in dialogue with them. And I'm sure what they say kind of affects me as well. But I try to internalize the information I receive and make my own sense out of it before I actually take it on board.
Listen, it's no surprise to me that I'm enjoying talking to you. I always do. You have such insights, and you often surprise me with where things go. Before I let you go, let me come back to somewhat where we started in terms of being Iranian. And when I was in London shooting our Talking to Persians doc in 2021, you told me you were really sick and tired of identity-centered art, and you didn't really care to be classified as an Iranian painter. Do you still feel that way?
When I talk about it, people think about, they say sometimes, oh, humble, is it that bad being Iranian? It has nothing to do with being bad or good by being Iranian. I am an Iranian. I was born in Iran. I was born in south of Iran. I'm aware of my heritage. I'm aware of my history of place of birth and where I grew up as a child, but that is a completely different subject. I think when you categorize somebody as a Iranian artist, Middle East artist, disabled artist, LGBTQ artist, it's a subcategory, and I don't want to be a subcategory. I'm a fucking artist.
How many more times are you going to swear during this interview? Just tell me now, because I appreciate every swear word. I really do. I take it to the bank. Tell me, before I let you go, what are you most looking forward to in the coming months?
Most looking forward.
This is your opportunity to plug an exhibition or something if you wish to, but you can answer the question however you want.
Well, this is the project I'm working on. It's going to come out in a form of an exhibition. And I'm contradicting myself and not planning for future, but it's going to be next year, 2024. We haven't decided on the exact date yet. I'm working with a couple of very extremely amazing musicians, and that it's going to be kind of very early stages. The sound is going to be recorded for my each painting, if you like. So as I say, it's very early stages, and I'm extremely excited about it. I mean, the musicians, they are amazing musicians. Hopefully, we are discussing it. It started in the last couple of weeks, the discussions and all that. and conceptualizing and the way we talk about the what was always been interesting to me. There are a few things in music and in painting that are very similar. The notion of rhythm, movement, harmony, and people don't realize how these are similar in both music and in painting. And I realized that I learned that having discussions with these musician friends, and so it's the way it's developing is very exciting, and I'm looking forward to it.
We don't know where that exhibition would potentially be. Is it going to be in London?
It's definitely going to be in London. Unless I can get an offer that I cannot refuse.
Everyone has a price, Afshin.
Absolutely.
Listen, I have very much enjoyed this. It's such an honor to have you as a friend and to have you on the show, and I really appreciate the time.
I appreciate your time as well. I mean, I always, I enjoy having discussions and talking with you anyway. So goes without saying.
Continued, brother.
Cheers to that.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There he is, Afshin Naghouni, joining me from London. Always a pleasure to have him on the show. The great man, the great painter, the great presence. This is Full Time for Roqe for today. Thank you so much for listening across our platforms. Remember to catch anything you have not heard before from our entire back catalog, over 300 shows, our videos, our funnies, our extras, our other programs. roqemedia.com, ROQE media.com is where to go, which is also where you can find links to all of our different platforms and support us by pressing the Support Us button, funny enough, and becoming a Patreon member. roqemedia.com. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together: Savvy Roham, Super Parisa, Methodical Kaveh, Smart Pegah, Bearded Omid, Sound Person Louise, Talented Anahita. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content and subscribing. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashi.